Compound elements are those that are defined by a single layer or multiple layers. That includes walls, floors, roofs, and ceilings. To see the available types in your project, you can expand the Families branch in the project browser and then expand the appropriate category. For example, when you expand Floors and then Floor, you can see the available floor types in the project. To open the type properties, you can right-click one of the types and then select Type Properties. In the Type Properties dialog, you can see all of the type parameters that define the floor type. To create a new floor type, you must duplicate an existing type, so you should start with a type that's similar to the one you want to create. To duplicate a type, make sure the type is selected in the Type drop-down and then click Duplicate. Then you can enter a name for the new type. For this example, I'll change it from Wood Finish to Carpet Finish. And then I'll click OK, and the new type is created. Now I can adjust any of the type parameters to define the new type. When you click Edit next to Structure, it opens the Edit Assembly dialog. And this is where you can modify the layers that make up the compound floor type. Each of the layers is defined by a function, a material, a thickness, and then there are some additional options depending on what you are editing. In this case, we really just need to adjust the finish, but I'll talk through a few of these options here. So the function, when you click in that field and expand the drop-down, you can see all of the available options. And there's a number inside of square brackets, and that indicates the priority level that Revit is going to use when connecting the floor to other compound structures. 1 is the highest priority, whereas 5 is the lowest priority. And for floors, you'll notice that the structure function as well as the structural deck function have the highest priority at 1. To change the material, you can click in the material field and then click the More button, and this opens the material browser. You can simply browse through the available materials, or you can begin typing in the search field to filter the list. As I type carpet, you can see that the list is filtered, and then I can select the carpet material and then click OK. And you can also adjust the thickness for any of the layers. In this case, I'll change the thickness to 1/2 inch. I'll type 0 space 1/2 and press enter, and then Revit will add the rest for me. You can insert additional layers and then modify the function, material, thickness, and choose some of the options there. You can also move the layers up and down using the up and down buttons, and you can always select a layer and delete it. Once you have defined the layers in the assembly, you can click OK to close the Edit Assembly dialog, and then you can adjust any of the other type properties, and then click OK once you have defined your new floor type, or roof type, or ceiling type. They are all made up of various layers. Next, switching gears, we'll look at sloping and how we can slope roofs, floors, and even ceilings. For roofs and floors, you can use what's called the shape editing tools. So if we look at this roof here, you can see that it is sloping toward what would be some roof drains. And the only way to accomplish that is by using the shape editing tools. And when I select the roof, you can see that there is a shape editing panel up on the contextual ribbon tab. And you can add points and split lines, and then adjust the elevation of those. So for this example, we'll click Reset Shape, and then open the roof floor plan view. And we still have the roof selected here. So when you're going to use the shape editing tools, you can either add points. So I'll click Add Point, and then I'll select in those same locations where those previous points were. And then I'm going to click Modify Sub-Elements, and then I can select a point, and then this control becomes available, and I can click it to activate it, and then adjust the elevation of this point. So just to keep it simple, I'll type -1 and press Enter. And when I do, you can see these additional lines, and those are added by Revit sloping the roof. So those are additional split lines that were added. And when I select the other point, I can adjust the elevation to the same. I'll do -1 foot, and you can see the split lines adjust accordingly. I'm going to go ahead and click Modify, and then go back to that 3D view, and you can see how our points there are adjusting the slope of the roof. Now I'll go back to that roof floor plan view one more time, and this time I'm going to click Add Split Line, and now we can simply sketch a line to add a split line. And then I can click Modify Sub-Elements again, and I can actually select that split line and adjust the elevation, or I can select any of these split lines that Revit adds automatically. And I'll click Modify and go back to the 3D view, and now you can see the original sloped roof that we had. So that's how the shape editing tools work. To look at the sketch tools, we'll switch to another exercise file. And here we have a simple sloped roof, and I'll open the roof floor plan view. And when I select the roof and click Edit Footprint, Revit goes into sketch mode. And you can see a slope icon adjacent to each sketch line. And when I select one of the sketch lines, you can see there's a Defines Slope option in the options bar. When that option is deselected, the slope icon does not appear, whereas when it is selected or enabled, then you can see that slope icon. So for this sketch line, we disabled it. So I'll click Finish Edit Mode, and then we'll take a look at the roof in 3D. And you can see that the roof no longer slopes toward that sketch line. I'll go back to the floor plan view and select the roof and click Edit Footprint again. And I will enable Define Slope for that sketch line again. And there are several things that we can do. So you can split sketch lines, and then you can use the slope arrow tool. So for example, when I click Split Element, and then split the sketch line here on the front of the roof, and I'll split it in a few locations. Now what I can do is click Modify, and then I can select a couple of these sketch lines and deselect Define Slope. And then what we can do is use the Slope Arrow tool, and I can sketch a slope arrow along these sketch lines. So what I'll do is I will sketch 2 slope arrows sloping up toward each other. And then for each slope arrow, you can define the slope. And you can define that by choosing the Specify option, which can either be height at tail or slope. And with height at tail, you can specify the offset at the tail and the head. What you need to do is specify a level and then an offset from that level. So right now we're at 10 feet for the head and 0 feet for the tail. And we'll do the same thing for both of these. The other option there to specify the slope is by simply selecting slope, and then you can specify the actual slope value. For this example, I'm going to leave them both at height at tail, and then I'll click Finish Edit Mode. And now we can see something that we've created here. So you can see that the roof is still sloping toward those original sketch lines. And then for the ones that we split and added slope arrows, now the roof is sloping up from those points.